I'm Simon Dommett, and I'm going to walk you through how to assemble my wheelchair I make for medium-sized dogs. So this is what it looks like fully assembled. Just now I'll take it apart so you can see what it'll look like when it arrives to you. The only tools that you need, very important, is a 3mm Allen key. I normally ship these. Sometimes I battle to get stock, so if you don't get one, that's because I can't get any. That's a standard 3mm Allen key, but I do normally ship them with them. Second thing that you'd need would be a normal Phillips head screwdriver for the caps at the end. So when you get the wheelchair, it should be partially assembled, so that I can get it into a box. It does need to be partially disassembled, and there's a couple components. Start off with your U-frame. It might be disassembled, but I'll try and ship it like this because assembling the back half is a bit of a fiddle. But that's what it should look like assembled. Very importantly, these little bumps, you can see those are all pointing up. That's really important. The writing at the corners here is also pointing up. Okay. So the wheelchair will be made roughly to the dimensions for your dog. Adjustments can be made, however, if the measurements are completely wrong and things have not worked out. It's not a disaster. All we need to do is change the aluminium extrusions, these aluminium parts, so we can just retake the measurements and then I can ship you the replacement parts if something's gone wrong with the measuring process. Okay, so before we start assembling the frame properly, this is a really good opportunity to do the first adjustment. So the front of if you line this up behind your dog at this stage, it's quite easy without the rest of it on there. Line this up behind your dog. What you want is you want the front of these bars to be in line with the front of the dog's chest, and you want these holes for the struts here to be in line with that dog's hips or the middle of its back legs. There is room to adjust this by taking out these two screws and moving it forwards and backwards. So that's the first step. It is easy to adjust this later as well, but it is much easier to get that preset done now before you even assemble anything. It makes it a whole lot easier. And that measurement is quite simple, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. But that bar end in line with the front of the dog's chest, and then set the length of this here so that those holes are in line with the middle of the dog's back legs. Okay, so once you've got that assembled, the next thing is to put the wheels and the struts on. Now you will see that there is a 45-degree angle here, and there is a 45-degree angle there. It's not just for aesthetics. If you know anything about 3D printing, you should be able to figure out what that's for. It's a structural thing, not actually an aesthetic thing. But now, what is quite important is to line up. You see, if I put this on the wrong way around, those two ends butt up against each other, and that takes away a lot of room for adjustment. So, if it's lined up correctly, you should be able to sleeve those two pieces right up against each other. Okay, so this is the next set for adjusting your next adjustment step now. Line this up behind the dog in a standing position, and what you want is you want to set this height so this bar here is just in level, just below the level of the dog's back. Okay, definitely not as high as the dog's back, and not as low as the dog's tummy. You want it just below the level of the dog's back when that is horizontal. So guess where that is. We can adjust it later. We're going to definitely need to adjust it in time as you figure out where things go. But for now, start off with that height there just below the dog's back. So now we're going to line it up where we think it is. We're going to find the nearest hole that works. You're going to take one of these M4 bolts that's been supplied to you. You're just going to put it in there, start off with finger tightening. Okay, so now through the other side quite easily, and we're going to tighten it up. You don't want to over tighten these all you got to do is just get it to bite into that nylock nut on the other side. If the nylock nut falls out, I do supply you with spares. They are standard M4 nylock nuts, nothing fancy. You can buy them at your local hardware store. So just tighten it up, just finger tight like that. Don't crank it because you don't want to cause stress fractures in the plastic. The point of it is just to stop it moving up and down. The strength does not come from the bolt, the strength comes from the shape of that sleeve it's sleeved into. So don't tighten it too tight. Right, the other side, same story, but now it's easier. We just got to match it up to the same level that that side was on. There you go, bit of a wiggle. Stick that bad boy in there. Come on. There we are, nice and even. Finger tighten that in. Okay. Tighten that up there. Just so it engages the nylock nut on the other side. Easy peasy. Okay, right. The last step to assemble the frame. These will not be done for you. These you'll have to do on your own, and there's a reason. And I'm not going to do them in the video now for the same reason. Once these caps go on, they're not going to be easy to come off, and it'll be difficult to slide the strut out again once these are on. So they won't be assembled for you. These simply press in there. It should be a tight fit, so you can give it a bit of a good firm push. There is a little hole there that lines up with the top hole, and there's a little screw that you'll be supplied just simply to screw through there, and that will engage in the little hole in there. So push that in, screw it in, and that's locked in. Now if the wheelchair is set so the aluminium extrusion is not sticking out the top and it's actually within here, you don't need that cap, it's not necessary. But because I'm going to design it, I'm going to cut it and measure it for you, so there should be a little bit proud at the top so that you've got room to adjust. It probably is going to stick out just a little bit, and that's why you want the cap, so you don't have any sharp ends sticking up and it's going to scratch anyone. Okay, right, so that's the last step to do for the frame. Now, your frame is assembled. Now we've got to put the soft plastics in. First things first, you're going to take your saddle, rounded end up, flat end at the bottom. I named everything based on horse things just because it just makes sense to me. So if that's a saddle, saddle's held on by the girth. So take your girth straps, slot them in there. There'll be two of these. Okay. Simple as that. Now your girth straps are slotted in those two holes on either side. Now, let's position this so you can see. And take your girth straps up on the inside. Oh, put it that way around. I like to put that rounded thing in front, so it doesn't really matter. Girth straps go up on the inside. Down on the outside. Start off with the level just near the top. You're going to adjust this with time and figure out what the right height for your saddle is. Make it even. When you lock that in, you're going to press the soft rubber over those little bumps that stick out the top. Locked in, it won't slide now. Okay, I'll do the same on the other side. That up there. Put that up there. Down the other side. Make sure it's even both sides, that's very important. Okay, even both sides. That's probably a bit tight. I'll probably lower it one down just start off with. Get a nice bit of a hammock shape going. Like I said, this is something you're going to have to figure out where's comfy for your dog, and I'll go through that just now about how to get that right. Right, so that saddle and girth is now in place. Now for the stirrups. They actually look like stirrups too. Okay, these are optional, don't have to use them. And primary use for these is dogs who happen to drag their back legs. If your dog doesn't drag his back legs and they actually uses them in the wheelchair, that's great, let him use them. It's really good for stimulation, getting those muscles going. There are a lot of dogs who half use them, half drag them. And what I mean by that is when they're going slowly, they'll use the back legs. But when they're going on a very excited run or walk, they're going very fast, those back legs, they just give up trying and they just drag the back legs. Then these also come in quite useful. So, very simple. Okay, same process. You're going to take that, and I stick it on the outside. You can figure out what works for you. Up on the outside, down on the inside. Let's show you. Just like that, same sort of story. Figure out the length that works for you. Do the same with the other one. Lots of room and adjustment on these, so you can figure out what's the right height for your dog. Make sure they're even. Okay, right. That's what they'll look like when they're assembled. Cool. Dog's back feet can literally just hook out and stick out the back of those when he's going, if you want. Okay. Let's have a little chat about how to adjust the wheelchair. Okay, so we chatted in the beginning about the alignment. Now it's quite easy to see why. With the back legs in these holes, the bum will be sticking out about here. These bars should be in line with the front of the chest. Why? Because you want to attach these holes here using cable ties to the front of the dog's harness. You want it in front of the harness because the weight should be towards the front, in front of the shoulders as much as possible. If you were to attach the weight behind the dog's shoulders, you end up putting quite a lot of weight on the spine at the back. It's very uncomfortable. If you have the weight on the base of the neck in front of the shoulders, that is the ideal place. In terms of harness choice, on that note, seeing as we're now talking about that, and harnesses, a step-in harness is much easier to use. It's much more practical. Weight distribution kind of puts the weight directly over the shoulders in a step-in harness, which is okay. I'm happy with that. But I make sure to attach the wheelchair to the straps in front of the shoulders, not behind. And that pulls it forward a little bit. And that's okay. So a step-in harness is really easy because you've just got one clip. It stays permanently attached to the wheelchair. And then you can just lower the dog into the wheelchair, lift this up, clip him in. Works great. Traditional H harness or the adventure harnesses with lots of padding are very comfortable and they're fantastic when the dog's clipped in. Getting the dog in and out of those when it's attached to the wheelchair is not easy in a small dog, and a medium-sized dog is going to be very challenging. So I'd highly recommend trying to get a padded step-in harness. We can get harnesses made up if you need, but most regular step-in harnesses work great. Okay, so you've got that in line with the front of the dog's chest. You can take out these two screws to move this forwards and backwards as you need. So that's quite simple. That's the forward-backward adjustment. The up-down adjustment, this is something that takes trial and error, and every dog is different in the setting. The one thing I'm going to ask you to keep in mind is when the dog is set up in the harness, you want to try and keep this bar as horizontal as possible. The moment the wheelchair is at this angle, you'll see the mechanics work funny, he's uncomfortable. The moment the wheelchair is in this angle, they often tend to swing over backwards, and the wheelchair kind of creeps up underneath them, or they can even fall backwards. Particularly in the small dogs, falling backwards is an issue. And bigger dogs, less of an issue, but the wheelchair creeps up. you want to try and get this set up so that it is as horizontal as practically possible. Every dog is different, so that is something to figure out. You adjust the height in two ways. One, by taking this screw out and adjusting the strut for the wheel up and down. Okay, number one. Number two, you're going to adjust these girth straps to adjust the saddle up and down. And you'll start off with figuring out what looks right to you, and then over time you're going to figure out what actually works. If the wheelchair is too low, either it's going to be like that, or if it's horizontal and his bum is just too low, the back leg is going to drag quite severely. In a dog who's placing his feet, you want them to drag slightly so that he can place his feet. And if it's too low, he's going to battle to bring these feet forward, especially if the legs are not strong. If the legs are quite strong, you can have it low so he can place his feet. But if he's battling to bring that foot forward, raise his back legs up slightly, and then he can just toe touch, and it works great. And especially for those fairly paralyzed dogs, it just gets stimulation going, and quite often they learn to move the back legs while they're walking, even though they're not doing much. It's great for them. Raising the back legs higher so the back legs aren't even touching is impractical. You end up almost always with a cocked wheelchair like this and the dogs are uncomfortable. If the back legs are dragging because they're not using them, don't try to raise them up any higher. Rather use the stirrups and tie the legs back. Yes, a lot of dogs dislike these stirrups in the beginning. For those dogs that are leg draggers, quite often they'll kick and they'll fuss, but they get used to them. So if your dog's legs are dragging, don't try and raise this too high, rather use the stirrups. But this is something you're going to have to figure out after a couple of uses. The other thing is that when it comes to using these wheelchairs, the first time and the first 5 times might be quite awkward, but as the dog gets used to it, he's going to get going faster and faster, and he's going to get more confidence in it. And in the beginning, what's quite common is the dogs are hesitant to get into the wheelchair and they're hesitant to get started. After a handful of uses, they start to see the wheelchair and get really excited because they know that means it's time to go for a walk, just like a dog is when you get the lead. So they learn to love the wheelchair after a couple of uses. But yeah, the first few times there is a bit of hesitance there, and that's something to work around. Okay, I think we've covered all the basics and all the ins and outs. All of these parts are replaceable, and it is a dog. They do silly things with them. They might chew them, they might get bumped by other dogs or trip under your feet and parts break. It's not a problem. Each of these parts can be easily replaced and shipped to you. And like I said before, if the measurements for the frame are way wrong, these aluminium extrusions can be replaced with a more appropriate size. So we can take things from there. Okay, thanks.